We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness. With God on our side, we're marching strong, looking out for hurting children all around, and helping good parents carry on. Standing united, we'll overcome. We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness.
Good night and welcome to Family Fest 2024. It is a joy to be with you this evening as we seek to share information and knowledge about families to help you improve your family situation. My name is Graham Vaughn and I'm going to be your moderator. Tonight, we have several guests and we're looking forward to a very interesting panel discussion on the topic, narcissism and parental alienation. We do wish to apologize for the late arrival of one of our guests. He is in a territory that does not have electricity at the moment, and we're hoping to have him join us very soon. However, we are going to go ahead and get started, and I'd like to start by introducing our guests this evening. First, our topic, and it is a very interesting one, as I said, narcissism and parental alienation. And this evening, as we look at this topic, we want to look at it from individual and a collective perspective. We can see that these are two areas that tend to be very misunderstood and or overlooked. This discussion, we're going to try to uncover the facts about narcissism and parental alienation, both individually and collectively, and make connections between the two. In understanding these dynamics, families can now gain some measure of relief through knowledge and understanding, and hopefully be better equipped to manage the devastating ravages of narcissism and parental alienation. This discussion will also seek to uncover the fundamental root science and connections between narcissism and parental alienation to give a clear clinical and practical understanding of both. That's our aim this evening. Thank you for joining us. And I'd like to say good evening to our panelists that are here with us at the moment. We have Cornelius Bartlett.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, great being here.
And Ms. Donna Cox.
Donna Tulcox, good evening. Glad to be here as well.
Good evening. Please forgive me, Donna Tulcox.
No problem.
We are hoping to be joined, in fact, I believe we will be joined very shortly by Mr. Krishnan Hurdle. But let me get started while he is joining us. Let me get started by saying that this is a topic that a lot of people have been, as I have been in my position as the PRO of Family Fest. As we have been discussing this, a lot of people have been raising a lot of queries about it, and that they are not exactly sure why this needs to be looked at. Yes, narcissism is very familiar to most people, but a lot of people have been wondering about parental alienation and exactly what it is. We are looking at taking this all down. We're going to delve right in, I'd like to say good evening and welcome to Krishnan Hurdle, our final panelist this evening. Welcome, sir. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Good evening, Graham, and good evening, listeners.
All right, let's get straight into it. Narcissism and parental alienation. And what I'm going to do is throughout the questions, and I'm going to ask you all to go ahead and answer and just add if you have anything to add or if you want to tweak something that someone else has said. But we really want to move this conversation along this evening. So I'm going to ask that you make sure and be as concise as possible in your answers. But let's start with definitions because we need to know what it is that we are dealing with. So let's start with narcissism because this is the part of it that everybody thinks they know. Everybody thinks they have a handle on. And I have found that that's not quite the case. So, panelists, what is narcissism?
Okay, I will start if it's possible. Narcissism is one of these trendy words that we're using a lot of these days. And people, like you said, do not fully understand what narcissism really is. It is a psychological personality trait, and it has been defined by the DSM-3, which is a diagnostic tool that's used by psychologists, not DSM-5, I'm sorry. And it is within the cluster of the dramatic and erratic behavior. So it's not simply the grandiose feelings of superiority. It fits into a category and it is diagnosed with 5 elements out of several that this person has to have as symptoms. And these would range from fantasies of perfection and superiority, a sense of specialness and uniqueness, the need for praise and attention, and a strong sense of entitlement, a tendency to exploit others. I mean, narcissists who are diagnosed have a lot of manipulation and exploitative traits, as well as a lack of empathy for others. Jealousy, envy, and distrust are also symptoms that the person with the narcissistic personality disorder would have, as well as arrogance and scorn. Now, the thing is, there's another aspect of narcissism, which is called overt narcissism. And that is the kind that, I guess, when we think of somebody like Donald Trump, and we think narcissist, that's what we would think of, okay? Where this grandiose, over the top, everything all balls up into one. But most of the time, a diagnosis would involve 5 of those particular traits, just 5 of them. And one of the problems with a person who's got narcissistic personality syndrome, unlike someone who says, for example, oh, I'm feeling depressed, a narcissist does not realize that they have a psychological issue. They think that's the way they are, they're better than everybody else. And if you disagree with them, you are not helpful. So that is part and parcel of what true narcissistic disorder really is about. It's not just the person that gets on your last nerve, and people use that term a lot these days. Oh, that person is a narcissist because they don't agree with me, or I don't agree with what they do. It really is a syndrome, and they really are people that are ill.
Okay. Great start, Donna. I like how you opened that debate here. I would want to also add that with this personality disorder, there are lots of roots within the childhood of the narcissist. So one of the things in my studies of human behavior, because I study human behavior as a hobby, and one of the things I've come to realize is that probably all of the traits or all of the dysfunction, if not most of the dysfunction that we have in adulthood, started in childhood. And what the researchers have found is that troubled childhoods, where children, for example, are exposed to environments where they have to constantly prove themselves or where they are abused, emotionally abused, you find that those children find ways of surviving And the trauma of the childhood abuse is so acute that a lot of these children detach from the trauma, which is why, and it is very important for persons who are listening to understand this, right? Because I want to put this more layman. I know that the others here may be trained in psychology, but I'm like what I call an armchair psychologist. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it in layman terms. The trauma that a lot of these children go through in childhood causes them to detach. And as a result of not facing up to the shame and the anger and the resentment that they have from the treatment that a lot of them get in childhood, they deflect it on their friends, their workmates, and eventually their spouse when they get married. And because of the detachment, that is where we see the lack of empathy. They do not understand, they do not connect with the pain of what happened to them in childhood. And instead, they go through life with a false sense of self. If I were to make one statement in terms of what happens to the narcissist in adult life, I would say that a narcissist in layman terms is basically someone who is suffering from self-love deficiency. They're suffering from self-love deficiency. So we can build on that, but essentially, a person who does not love themselves cannot love anyone else. So you're going to find that as we go on to the other part of the topic, parental alienation, you're going to then, if you understand narcissism and its roots, then you will understand why it is so easy for a narcissist to use their children as pawns after divorces and after breakup of relationships.
Okay, I guess I should chime in here. Good evening. Good evening to the panelists as well. Cornelius, Donna, good to see you guys again. I think that, yes, Donna, you hit the nail on the head. Narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder is something that is an established psychological disorder, personality disorder. And many times the word is bantered around loosely. We see people that we think they have a strong sense of themselves and they might be very opinionative or egotistic, and we say that person is narcissistic or they don't really care about others. There are other personality disorders as well, but that's not something that we're going to discuss very deeply here in this discussion. So I think that an important point in not just the etiology, the causes, but the manifestation or the symptoms of a person with narcissistic personality disorder, which must be diagnosed. Well, you may see as a layman, you may see somebody with these traits, these behaviors. To be diagnosed, you have to have, as Donna suggested, about 5 different traits present over a period of time in response to certain situations or contexts to have that diagnosis. However, one of the things that I like to highlight when I speak about it is a person with narcissism or with narcissistic personality disorder struggles to be vulnerable. And so when the grandiose sense of self, the seeing themselves better than others, the lack of empathy, understanding for others, the lack of interest that they're hurting others, the willingness or the desire to basically put themselves ahead of others. It is because when they're made to feel vulnerable, they really are. It's a defense mechanism. So they're defending themselves by, as we say in Barbados, we want to make everybody look bad so that we can look good, or we want to get affirmation, or we want to big up ourselves by making other people look small or by marginalizing them. If we can get people in a corner, we get more, or those people, when they can get other people in a corner, when they can get other people to be minimal to them, or subordinate to them, then they make themselves look bigger and more powerful and more important.
And the important thing, before you go on, Graham, I like what Krishnan was saying. And the important thing that you need to remember is that when the mask, because bear in mind that a narcissist literally learned to wear a mask. And when that mask is removed, the vulnerability that Krishnan talked about, it is extremely painful to have it exposed. So I want to make the point here that a narcissist isn't necessarily trying to be wicked. I know that when you experience, when you're on the receiving end on what they dish out, you would think that they're evil. But essentially what it is really a defense mechanism, a survival mechanism. That's all it is. I'm not trying to ask for sympathy, but I'm trying to ask for understanding that this is in truth and in fact a personality disorder that speaks to pain, that speaks to shame, that speaks to jealousy, that speaks to all of the things that a lot of these human beings go through from childhood. And when that mask is removed, or you attempt to remove that mask, they go into a rage, and that rage will end up in lies, trying to make you look bad. I mean, you really do not want to see the wrath of a person who is diagnosed or who has narcissistic personality disorder if you try to remove that mask. It is absolutely devastating.
I can
Wow.
add something here as well about the mask, as you so aptly put it. It is a defense mechanism because a lot of the time the narcissistic personality disorder does not allow you to see things as they really are.
Wow.
Okay, that's one of the major problems. You do not see the reality that really is there. And in order for you to deal with that, you have got to take this persona of being better than, always having one up over someone else, to the point where one of the complications of narcissistic personality disorder is something called anorexia nervosa, where a person is a proper size and see themselves as so fat that they have got to starve themselves to look thin, and they literally kill themselves. Now that is an extreme form of that that disorder. But the fact of the matter is, a narcissistic person hurts other people as well as themselves. And I think that is what we also have to be able to look at tonight as an explanation as to why they do certain things. And even with the parental alienation that we're going to get to, why that is not necessarily they're connected. But you could have a narcissist, diagnosed narcissist, who does not have anything to do with parental alienation. But most people who have to do parental alienation tend to have narcissistic qualities. And that's something else we're going to get to.
Wow. That is a comprehensive answer. If I may, let me see if I can summarize what you said, that a narcissist is someone who, because of childhood trauma, undealt with childhood trauma, has learned to deflect and defend against not just the trauma, but all of reality. That they have decided, not decided, but they are now painting their own reality. They are oblivious to what is actually happening because they are analyzing anything that happens through their own personal worldview. And they seek to control situations and people to be able to make their worldview reality. Do I have it?
Yeah, that's about it. Very well summed up.
Okay. Now, the reason I wanted to sum that up is because I cannot see this being good. And Cornelius mentioned earlier that a narcissist is not necessarily trying to be evil. They're not seeking to be evil. It is something that plays out because they're not responding correctly to the truth. They're using, we hear a lot of people expressing the point of view of their truth these days instead of the truth. And one of the things that is very interesting about this is that now we're talking about marriage. We're talking about a scenario that involves two people who need to be selfless, who need to have a very good grip on reality, who have to be forgiving and, most of all, vulnerable. How does this work if you find yourself in marriage with a narcissist? What are some of the things that somebody who is looking at their spouse a slight bit askance, having heard this definition, what are some of the elements of daily life that may present themselves in marriage or in a relationship, rather, with a narcissist?
But the first thing I would say, Graham, was that I don't want to make this some straight line, because life isn't straight line. Life isn't black and white either. Life is a lot of gray. And understand this and understand this clearly. There are many people who can survive in a marriage with a narcissist for many, many years. It all depends on how well the hand fits the glove. So, for example, if you have a codependent type of personality where you are serving all the needs and you're giving the supply to the narcissist that the narcissist needs, that marriage can go on for many, many years. In fact, it could even go on for life. So I don't want to portray the idea that every single narcissist that is in a marriage, that the marriage ends up in divorce or the marriage ends up volatile, because then it depends on the personality type of the spouse. So if you have a spouse that, for example, is very accommodating, very giving, very selfless, you would find that that person will survive, and that person might be the type of person that is involved in, that likes to praise their spouse, that worships the spouse, then that is really a match made for them. But when you have a situation where, for whatever reason, someone becomes disenchanted with giving all the time, and constantly being the one to be taking responsibility and taking on weight that they really shouldn't have to take on alone, and the mask is taken off, or the rug is pulled from under the narcissist, then you see the unleashing of those very volatile traits. So I wouldn't want to go the line of making the assumption that as soon as someone has those personality traits, that they will not work out in a marriage. It all has to do with the kind of person that they're married to, and how the marriage develops. So I would leave that there for my fellow.
And I'd like to add something here to what Cornelia said. It is a very complicated situation, because not every single person who has been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder had it from childhood. Sometimes a present trauma or present change in circumstances could also bring the manifestation of it to a relationship. I'll give you an example. There was a couple that got married when they were very, very young. The man was a musician, and the wife, the woman, she was a fan, but they were very, very young. During the course of their relationship, he became a well-known musician, and she became a well-known person in management. Eventually, times change, music changes, and he lost that high pillar that he had of being this well-known musician. And her business acumen, her management skills took over. What happened is he started to manifest the narcissistic personality disorder, where every opportunity he took, he beat her down. He basically tore her down psychologically. And eventually we get the other part with the alienation of the parent. But what he did was he reduced her within the home to being nothing or even being less than their last child, because he had to maintain this grandiose idea that he was on top, despite the fact that if it weren't for her, he wouldn't really be eating. And because she loved this man, she loved the man that she knew beforehand, she stayed with him for as long as she could until it was necessary for her to leave. Okay, so living with him, this quote unquote new narcissist, for her nearly took her life. And in many cases, when people are married or get together, the narcissistic relationship does not necessarily happen from the very beginning. And most people who are in a relationship feel as though, who is this person now? And that's the other complication of it. It's not necessarily cut and dry. It's not something like if, you had diabetes from the age of birth until It's like almost like getting type 2 diabetes in the middle of your life. Okay, it comes up. So that's the other complication of narcissistic tendencies, narcissistic personality disorder.
Don, I just wanted to, before we want to, Kristen, I just wanted to jump in here and say that, I would want to say that the predisposing condition could have always been there. But when the uncovering happens is when you see the manifestation. I don't want us to mix up the fact that the manifestation, sorry, let me put it this way. We cannot assume that the dysfunction is not in there because it has not been unearthed. A lot of times, these traits are only unearthed after they're triggered. So we have to talk about triggers, and divorce for sure is one of the big triggers. So as we even segue into parental alienation, we're going to realize that the narcissist traits could lie dormant for many, many, many years.
Exactly.
And it is only
and I like the word trigger.
Yeah, trigger is the word that we have to use. So when you have the trigger, and that trigger could be a divorce, which means now the person now is exposed. They're not so perfect. Your wife or your husband divorced you. So what is wrong with you? Now that is extremely painful. And I want us to understand this, that everybody who goes through divorce goes through pain. But I tell you, if I were, from my studies of it, if I were to estimate, I would say that a divorce hurts a person with NPD probably 10 times more than the average person. And I will close there and let Christian win.
I've got some friends and clients paying attention to the broadcast, and as I get feedback from some of them, I just want to address two things right now, or basically reaffirm two things. That the person is not necessarily the defense mechanisms of a person with narcissism are not only because they are defending themselves, right? Sometimes they do it just because they do it for fun. They may do it because they are marginalized or antagonized, and they may do it because it's an opportunity for them to gain self-esteem. One of the features of not only narcissism, but parental alienation is the fact that the individual, because of their circumstances, have experienced low self-esteem. And that low self-esteem, that low sense of self, that low image of self causes people to do things that ordinarily, or the average person or the normal person wouldn't do. So they do it for fun. They do it when they're antagonized or marginalized. They do it when they're under pressure, but they may just do it because, for whatever reason, because they're perceived in their current situation, they perceive that it is an opportunity for them to get glory or for them to get some kind of approval for doing it, right? And as we transition into parental alienation, that is a phenomena where, and it happens on one of two cases. There is the child alienating another parent, alliancing or joining forces with the other parent and alienate the other parent. So the alienated parent who is being rejected is being alienated by the child or being alienated by the other parent. And they are not allowed to socialize. They're not allowed to meet up. They're not allowed to communicate with the other parent or with the child. Most of the time, it's happening with the child because the child is often used as a pawn to take their rights away or to antagonize them, the other parent, the alienated parent. And the whole idea here is that if we can frustrate them, if we can emotionally suffocate them, then they will feel the wrath, they will feel our wrath, they will feel my wrath, and they will get what is coming for them, what is coming to them for the perceived idea of whatever they did. Many times, not always the case, but many times it comes with the parent who is joining alliance with the child. That parent often does some level of we can use brainwashing or changing the perception of the child so that the alienated parent, there's no legitimate cause or reason or justification for the alienation. Many times there is souped up or cooked up reasons the parents is coming up with. Many times they're lies. Many times they are unjustified or inaccurate reasons for the alienation, simply because the parent does not want to see the other parent being happy or does not like to see them getting what they have rights to or what is due to them. So it's a phenomenon where the one parent or child is pushing the other parent away.
I'm going to ask Cornelius and Donna to weigh in, and just because I think Kristan segued really well there, just to remind though our followers and watchers on this evening's discussion that you can share your thoughts, you can share your questions, any comments, anything that you'd like the panelists to weigh in on, and we will of course address it, because we are looking forward to your feedback as we get deeper into this topic. But now I'm going to ask Donna to continue as we segue into parental alienation and unpack that a little bit more.
Okay, parental alienation does not only happen, normally happens around full separation and divorce situation. However, it does not only happen at that time. Sometimes it happens when the parents are still under the same roof, and it can lead to the separation and divorce. So let's start off first with something like a negative talk, where the alienating parent would encourage the child to speak badly of the target parent, okay? And that alienating parent would disagree right in front of the child with the target parent. So if the target parent has to do A, if the alienating parent has to do A, the target parent is said to say, well, no, you don't have to do that. Don't listen to the other parent. And then the child will misbehave and feel absolutely no sense of guilt for misbehaving toward one of their parents. Okay? The whole aspect of unfounded accusations is extremely real, because sometimes the alienating parent would use that as a basis for getting the child to say that the other parent has done something wrong to them. And that way now you have two people saying that a wrong has been done, when in truth and in fact, nothing has actually happened. Okay? Especially when we're looking at child abuse situations. One parent would tell the child, this is what you have to say, or this is what you have to do, so that this other parent would not have a chance to do something that has not yet happened. Okay, that is another area where alienation takes place. The child is led to idolize one parent. Okay, so that parent would do everything that they can to let the child idolize them and love them more than, and would tell the child, I love you more than the other parent. The other parent doesn't love you as much as I do. And then they will also use withdrawal techniques, take the child away from the other parent, especially at key times, the holidays, key times when you will want to spend time with both parents, or at least share the time. No. We have this special time together, okay, all of the time. And then, should there be a separation, the child is made to feel that they are going to be uncomfortable with the other parent, to the point where sometimes the alienating parent convinces the child to be sick, hurt, have to go into therapy. Why? Because they're supposed to visit with the other parent. And these are just some of the ways that parents use various tactics to alienate the child from the other parent. Yes, the child is used as a pawn. And sometimes this pawn could be the golden child, meaning that I'm going to shower all my love on you. The scapegoat, it's your fault that everything wrong is happening. And all of the love and everything is withdrawn from the child. But the child is still alienated from the other parent as well. And another thing that happens is there's a lost child where the child is having no attention from the parent who is alienating them from the other parent, and they're still preventing the other parent from showing any attention to that child. So now you've got 3 different scenarios where children of parents who have been alienating them from the other parent are going to grow up in an environment where they have now learned and going through their own trauma, and they are now actually seeing that when they grow up, they're going to have all these different problems, saying distrust, envy. So it's almost as though the parental alienation syndrome is almost like a hereditary situation with the learned things passed on to the children. And furthermore, there are some people now who are seeing this whole parental alienation syndrome as another form of child abuse. And the school is out. Some people are saying they want to have it as a syndrome and a trait situation, a disorder, quite like narcissistic disorder. But people are now saying that also is abuse to the child.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Donna, because I was just there thinking that you need to put the child on the focus. And I would want to say that it is very, very abusive to children. And I want to also say that it is an extremely complicated situation. Life happens moment by moment, day by day, week by week. And can you imagine being a child? And children are vulnerable. Children are impressionable. Children want to have their own way. So can you imagine that when you were married, for example, you had a parenting style that both parents agreed that, no more than 1 hour of television after school or no television during the week. When you get these breakups where parental alienation is at work, and it's just one scenario, you can have the parent who gets custody, who might be the alienator, who very often is the alienator. You could have that parent saying, no, you can watch TV till 12 o'clock every night after school. Your mother or father that you go and visit don't want you to watch because they don't really love you. Even if they don't say it, the subliminal message that goes through to that child is the other parent doesn't love you. Bear in mind that the narcissist is portraying a false sense of self because in truth and in fact, what they project is the opposite of what they feel. And because of the condition that they're in, what you're going to find is that they actually can become jealous of the great relationship that the other parent has with the child. So once these 2 environments are separated, you're going to find that that parent is going to use a lot of subliminal messaging, a lot of lies and accusations, a lot of fear tactics. So let me give you an example. Let's say a child goes to be with a parent that's on the outside, the targeted parent for a weekend, and had a great time. Then they come back and the mom asks them, or the dad, whichever is the one doing the alienating, so how was it? And that child ever dare to say they had a great time? The parent is going to start to pull apart and negativize on that experience the child had. Literally, the parent paints a picture, a false narrative into that child's mind. And in studying human behavior, I realized that even adults are extremely susceptible to brainwashing. Brainwashing, there are techniques that are used for brainwashing. And for whatever reason, persons who have NPD seem to have a knack for it. The day in, day out, night in, night out, week in, week out, month in, month out, messaging to a child about the other parent. Negativity, the destruction of what was previously a normal parenting mechanism, all of a sudden becomes a weapon used against that parent. Things like punishing a child where you say, well, you're grounded for the weekend because of doing X or Y. If you're the alienated parent, the alienator will use those things against you. And the reason why it's important for us to have these discussions is that a lot of parents, when they end up on the other end of parental alienation, and in which case the alienator very often is a narcissist, the alienated parent usually make a lot of missteps and a lot of mistakes. Because just what happens when you are targeted with lies and innuendos, and you are being with certain privileges that you had as a parent are now being withheld. Most persons are going to get hurt in their emotions and they will react badly. And guess what? those bad reactions are going to be used against you with your own child. On a normal day, if you're parenting together in the same home, it will be a little different. But the very missteps that you make is going to be used against you. That is why these discussions are extremely important, because this is not about the fact that a narcissist will change because of a discussion that we're having, but it's about helping those parents out there who are struggling on the other end of the receipt of parental alienation to understand that if you are, in fact, in which most times you are dealing with a narcissist, you need to understand the rules of engagement. So when you look to actually retaliate in kind, or you look to expose the narcissist more, you are actually making your situation worse. That is the reason why you see, for example, that in court cases, very often the narcissist will win full custody. The narcissist will have protection orders granted against you, and you're the parent that, so they're trying to be nice, trying to be loving to your child, and you will be basically going out of your mind trying to figure out, how did this happen? This issue of NPD, as it relates to a parental alienation, is an extremely dangerous dynamic. And I will advise anyone listening to this discussion, if you yourself have not gone through it, but you have family or friends or someone you work with going through it, I would advise you to advise them to seek counseling, or a counselor who knows about this topic. Go online and investigate it more. At least it will increase your knowledge base and help you to navigate a lot better. But it's an extremely complicated area. It borders or it resides in the area of human behavior and psychology. So the average person on the street will not understand it. There are even judges and magistrates that are presented with these cases that they're trained in law. They're not trained in psychology. You have sometimes social workers that need to upgrade their training. You have some therapists and counselors that need to upgrade their training. Because when you are dealing with a person with narcissistic personality disorder, you're dealing with a very dangerous and a very devastating individual. A lot of them are very well loved because they know how to project the false self. A lot of them are very affable and well educated. So there's no look, there's no vicious look to a narcissist. There's no sign on their forehead. A lot of them are well liked, and a lot of them are very believable, because if you live from a childhood where you have to constantly prove yourself or to put on a false self, by the time you become an adult, you become really great at it. So I would say that to the average parent out there who is trying to be a good parent after a divorce or breakup, you need to understand what you're dealing with. You cannot use regular rules or regular standard logic to deal with a narcissistic parent on the other end. They will abuse your child or your children and use those children as pawns within this thing called parental alienation. Because remember, they're in it to win it. They're not trying to be fair. This concept of fairness and doing what is right, and the conscience that you may have about, I wouldn't do that to them if I were in that position, that doesn't exist in the world of a narcissist. You're dealing with a damaged human being, to put it bluntly. That might sound a little harsh, but that's the reality. You are dealing with a damaged human being with whom you were once married or with whom you have children. You have to learn how to navigate. And I will close there for now and pass on to one of my other colleagues.
Well, panelists, let me interject here, because I know that a lot of people watching, we live in Barbados, where we're speaking primarily from the Barbadian perspective. And one of the things that you hear often in the Barbadian perspective, in the Barbadian experience, is about how, especially with women, they're keeping the child from the father. Let me ask you, is every situation where that is occurring an example of parental alienation?
No, I would not say that. There are certain situations where it is for the benefit of the child, for one parent to say, well, you know what? The environment that my child is going to be in when they are in the other person's environment is not safe. And we know a lot of those environments too, because a lot of people tend to get together as two adults without thinking about having a child together. And most of the time, they're unequally yoked, to use a biblical term. Okay. Mm-hmm. And after the child comes, one parent realizes that, I'm not comfortable with my child in that particular environment, in that particular area, with those particular people. Sometimes they are equally yoked and something has occurred. Maybe they realize that the other person may have been abusive, alcoholic. So there are times when, with actual evidence, it is necessary to supervise the visitation between your child and the other parent, or your child and the other parent's family. So in those cases, it's not seen as parental alienation. But when it is deliberately done, with everything being relatively equal, everything being relatively safe, to hurt the other person because they have had, how dare you stand up against me? How dare you leave me? How dare you move on from me? Okay. Sometimes people use money. The child is a pawn. So unless that money comes into this house, you cannot get to have time with this child. Okay. Sometimes the child is used to punish the other person as well, in terms of the alienation, just for punishment. All right. And in those cases, that is really the abuse. You know when they're going to find out how bad it is for the child? When that child becomes either a teenager or a young adult. And that child can decide for themselves who really is in my court. How much time did you take away from me from getting to be with my other parent? Okay, it's not fair, it's not right. And then those children too suffer a lot of complications from being a child of who has been alienated from one of their parents. Sometimes when they get older, they decide that they're having nothing to do with either parent anymore. The one that they had been alienated from and the one who did the alienation. And then when they have their children, then that whole extended family situation is also lost. There's so many bits of complications that come in when you try to use a child as a pawn to hurt somebody else and to show yourself as more worthy of love than anybody else. It is very complicated.
There's a question that came up. Sorry, one moment, Cornelius. There's a question that came up in the chat on Facebook. The person is basically despairing. We've painted such a bleak picture that they are despairing of any hope. You're talking, Donna, about the child recognizing when they become a teenager. This is years gone by. This is an extended period of time in the child's life, in the parent's life, in the alienated parent's life.
Yeah.
Is there hope? Let's tweak it just a little bit. We're going to go back to the details and the facts again.
Yeah.
But let's tweak it just a little bit. Is there hope? Cornelius, you were just about to speak.
Yeah, well,
you want me to answer about the hope, or you're gonna?
I'm gonna let you speak about the hope, but I just wanted to jump in here and say that we defined the conditions for narcissistic personality disorder, but we did not define parental alienation in terms of conditions. And there are two conditions. There's several. There are about 8 or so, but I want to look at 2. In order for parental alienation to be parental alienation, which is different from estrangement, bear in mind that there are some parents, a lot of times fathers, sometimes mothers, who are so abusive that the child is better off not being around that person. But that's in pretty much rare cases. But there are 3 things that are outstanding from the research. And I want us to pay attention to this. 1, the parent that is being alienated is a parent that is actually interested in having a relationship with the child. All parents on the outside are not interested. So the man who is not interested in if his children live or die will very often never be a parental alienation victim because he's just not interested. So the parent has to be an interested parent. That's 1. 2, you're going to find that it has to be a situation where previously there was a great relationship, a great loving, encouraging, wonderful relationship between the parent and the child. It could not have been one where there was abuse and that kind of thing, right? And the third one is you're going to notice that if a child, for example, says that it wants nothing to do with the parent, this is research done by a very well-renowned psychologist. He said, whenever you see a child want nothing to do with a parent after a breakup or a divorce, you should start to look for parental alienation simply because, and listen to this, he said, even in cases where a parent is abusive, children still would want to have something to do with that parent. But when you see a child who will say, I don't want my parent at my wedding, I don't want them at my functions, my recitals, I don't want them at my sporting events. When you see a child saying that they don't want a parent, that's unusual. Even the worst parents, children will love to have some sort of relationship. That usually speaks to manipulation by the other parent in whose environment that child is with. And I want persons to really listen because I read and follow a lot of the research and seminars on this, and I've been doing it for a couple of years. Whenever you see a child who is saying that my mother or father is a villain, I want nothing to do with them, I don't want them to have anything to do with me, bells should go off in your head, because
that's the final stage.
Even the ones that experience all forms of abuse, whether it is physical or sexual abuse, they still have this lukewarm, I still want to spend time with dad or mom, I still want something to do with dad or mom. But they say that whenever you see, and this is research, this is not me, that I made it up. Whenever you see that, if you are a trained counselor, therapist, or whatever, you see that, it should send off bells in your head. And this is the words of a big name in the US that did research on this topic.
Quick question, Cornelius. Is that you're talking about young children, tweens, teens, or is that across the spectrum where you see this rejection, wholesale rejection of a parent?
It's right across the spectrum. And I'll give you all something very dark and grisly to think about. I know of a case, and I can send you all the report, it was a news report in the US, where a father this time, because usually the mother gets the children, so the mother is normally the one, mothers are normally the ones doing the parental alienation. But in this particular case, a father got this girl and had this girl brainwashed into parentally alienating the mother. Can you believe that that child was so well brainwashed that she actually participated in the murder of her own mother? Now that's a news item that went down across in the US. And when they unpacked it, they realized that parental alienation was at work all along. And this child got extremely brainwashed to the point where this child participated in the murder of her own mother. And the psychologists who were commentating over it said, can you imagine the day when she recovers the pain and the torture that this child will have to live with in adulthood when she realizes that I actually was tricked by my father into believing that my mother was a villain. And I actually participated in taking her life. I cannot reverse it. It's not like you could go and visit your mother after you participate in a murder. So I want people who are listening to this to understand that in most cases, it doesn't go that extreme, thank God. But I want us to recognize that this particular issue of parental alienation is dark, it is grisly, and it is devastating. It's a mental health disorder, it's a personality disorder. Donna, you are going to talk about hope.
Yes, I'm glad you said that story, because the first story I told about the musician and his wife, when it got to the point where she had no choice but to leave, he was making his two sons beat their own mother, and he was videotaping this. And that was what was used to in court to help deal with that situation. However, the hope is this: once a parent, the alienated parent, can get counseling for themselves as well as their child, okay, there is hope. Recovery may take a while, but there is hope, okay? Again, a lot of things have to be unmasked, but right now, the understanding is that therapy does help. Family therapy does help.
Donna, I wanted to also jump in here and say that the therapy you're talking about, sometimes that therapy becomes complicated because if the alienating parent makes it difficult for that child to go with you, the child doesn't want to go with you, you can't even get your own child into counseling. I've seen that.
Right, I know what you're talking about. But in some of the extreme cases, right, where it has gone to the point where intervention has taken place from an abusive situation, okay, there is hope with that. It's not just to get the child to say go with the other parent, all right? The other thing is this too. I have seen it not only with school-aged children, but also with babies. Young children who do not have the power of speech, but can cry, And when the alienating parent gets the child riled up, every time they are left with or go towards the alienated parent, the child cries. And then it is taught to them that this particular person makes you cry. And that is something that stays with that child all the way through. However, again, once you've got a situation where it is recognized early, and these days you are finding a bit more recognition, and intervention takes place. Intervention gives you some hope. And having seen that the narcissistic personality disorder has been considered a disorder, there is treatment that can be meted. Once you see that parental alienation syndrome is an abuse, a child abuse, intervention can be gained, and that too can be challenged and treated. It is not an overnight success. It'll take a long time. However, there is hope.
Krishnan, would you like to jump in on the hope train?
Well, I've worked with a few cases like these, and I've seen how difficult and how deep-rooted manipulation can be. And when we're dealing with manipulation, the goalposts are always being shifted. And when you have a situation where one parent is shifting the goalposts, and no matter what the other does, it's never enough. It is never, you're always being blamed for something. Even when you do it right, there's always something they're picking at. Then counseling or therapy is helping helping the participants to see where the faulty beliefs and where the manipulation is occurring at. So that it takes a while to begin to, as we say, reprogram or reverse some of those faulty beliefs. But ultimately, what we're happening is they begin to get some insight. They begin to get some perspective on what wasn't right, what was being done in manipulation, and they can better position the child, and the manipulated parent can better position themselves into a perspective that allows them to navigate the situation with greater clarity and without being so reactive, right? It's important not to be reactive. I think Cornelia spoke of it earlier. When someone is manipulating, the idea is to get one to react and to go out of their comfort zone and go outside of their personality. And they do this to one's own peril. So it's important to understand where the faulty beliefs lie, and then to begin to adopt behaviors and responses that are not going to be reactive, because that's going to tarnish the situation and make it worse for themselves.
Can I also jump in here, Krishnan, and add that as a therapist or a counselor, you too have got to be extremely skilled in working with these types of individuals, because the same way they manipulate their children and their friends, they will manipulate you.
That's right.
You will be manipulated. So you've got to be able to see it for what it is, and you need to be able to put these safeguards in place so that you yourself don't become a victim of the manipulation. And I tell you, it's a very complicated thing.
And let me come back at you there.
Yes.
So this is good. It's important to get both parties together. Many times, the manipulator will try to divide and conquer.
Yes.
They will try to do things individually on their own. And
Can I have an appointment with you by myself?
Yes. Or with me and the child.
Yes.
They will not, they will always try to distance themselves from the manipulated party.
Yes.
Exactly.
So it's important to not get biased or one-sided perspectives, opinions, but to try to bring parties together. And when you see there's a party who's trying their best to find solutions and participate and cooperate, and there's the other one who's resistant and who's hesitant and always pulling away, then they are more likely to be the one who is manipulating the situation.
Can I also add, those are the people who would call you afterwards because on the telephone, it's only you and them. They're going to want to be able to send you the WhatsApp messages. We're keeping it real, right?
Yeah.
The WhatsApp messages. They're going to be sending you that. They're going to be sending you special little cards, anything. So it's one-on-one. And then, even without your knowledge, they're going to tell the alienated person, well, guess what? I spoke with them and let them know. So it put additional fear and pressure on the alienated. There's so many ways. If they've got ways of getting to you, they will get to you and you alone if you're not careful.
And let me throw one in here that might be a little controversial, but I'll throw it anyway. If you have, especially with female narcissists, they will dress a particular way to come to those appointments.
Of course.
And you will be surprised to note that even that, in terms of dress code, is going to be a part of the manipulation package. One of the things that somebody said, I think online, said, you know, cute never looks guilty. Cute never looks guilty. So when you have someone, and some men do it, I mean, there's some handsome men that they go to the gym, they dress well or whatever, and they could easily go into a situation where they might be dealing with, let's say, a female counselor who may not be well trained in this area, and that person becomes manipulated, because we all know as human beings, we tend to respond like we say in court system, but I don't want to say pick on any area, but I want to keep it real. How a person presents. We watch movies and we cry, and we have something called actors and actresses that make us cry and make us fearful and make us laugh. Persons who have narcissistic personality disorder in the area of parental alienation can do the same thing. That's all. I'm going to leave it there.
But Cornelius, no, it goes both ways. You have the people that will dress up to come to you, and then they will have the people that will dress down and make you feel that the other person is so mean. Look at what I've come to. Anything to get you on their side, whatever works.
Yeah, that's right.
I know we have a couple of questions I'd like to address coming from YouTube. Good evening, Tiffany, and thank you very much. Is it possible to co-parent with a narcissist?
I've had that question before. You don't co-parent with a narcissist, you counter-parent with a narcissist.
Wow.
Yes, counter-parent. Right?
Please expand.
My answer was going to be, I understand what you're saying, Don, because it's difficult, because bear in mind that a narcissist is not interested in co-parenting per se. But what I would say, and I want to say this very carefully, once you understand, the hardest thing is to know. And the word of God tells us operate in wisdom and based on knowledge. Now, if you understand that the person you're dealing with is a narcissist, you're going to navigate differently. You're not going to get into these skirmishes and these fights. What you're going to do is you're going to sometimes give up your rights in terms of not trying to be right, not trying to point out anything, not trying to show them up. I mean, it is a whole education. So it is possible, but it requires a lot of skill and a lot of knowledge on your part as the other parent. You're going to very often have to eat humble pie. You're going to very often have to give up your rights to be right. And just understand that you're dealing with a very damaged individual. It's almost like you're passing a lion and the lion is sleeping. You've got to creep very, very slowly to make sure the lion doesn't wake up. Because if the lion wakes up, you know what's going to happen. I would like to hear Chris now on it.
Sorry. And these days, especially if there's a legal aspect to it, you have to know how to navigate that as well, so that you do not fall afoul, because it's very easy for the alienating parent to point and say you've broken the rules. Okay, so sometimes you may need to have a mediator to go between, especially the interactions. The narcissistic personality is never going to change. So as Cornelia said, you have got to adopt a new way of dealing with them, not just to keep the peace, but to keep your peace.
Yeah.
All right,
Keep
your peace. And so sometimes you may need a mediator. Sometimes you may need to have the legal aspect of it refurbished, replenished, almost like a lease. Make everybody come back to the table again, if you can. But again, we don't want to leave here tonight saying that it's hopeless, because now that you've gotten more information and you have a better understanding of what you are actually dealing with, you will be able to get even more advice from people once you can say, listen, this is what I'm going through, bam, 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 bam. What can I do this time? What can I do that time? There is hope. Do not leave here feeling hopeless. Knowledge is power.
And it's very interesting that we have these, because I want to remind everyone that you can't just run to your counselors, to your legal team, to whoever and say, I think I'm dealing with a narcissist. It doesn't work like that. It has to be something that is professionally looked at and diagnosed. Let's not make any armchair prognoses this evening or going forward. However, if you do think that this is the case, it is something to raise and investigate. Okay. There's another question about spirituality. Can spirituality be left out of the consideration of the topic of dysfunction of any kind in human behavior?
It's interesting that they asked that, because I don't know, just moving off. I was just thinking to myself that never forget prayer, because a lot of people who may not be faith-based may think that that prayer is some waste of time and something that people do when they have nothing better to do. But I can tell you from personal experience that I have found, right, that prayer works. Prayer works.
And don't fool yourself. There are people who are very spiritual, and when they come up against challenges such as these, they see it as a form of spiritual warfare. Okay, we can't leave that out. We are living in a spiritual place. So when that does happen, what do you do? If you are a soldier, what do? You do have your weapon. Your weapon is prayer. Your weapon is not only your praying, but the collective prayers of other people. All right? So if you are that way inclined, if you recognize that part of your person, your being, you pray for yourself, you pray for your children. Even if the child is with the alienating parent, you do not stop praying. And what do you pray for? You pray that their eyes get opened. You pray that they are protected. You pray that you have a relationship with your child that will surpass all understanding. That's what you pray for. And if you don't know how to pray, you go to somebody who does know how to pray and ask them how to pray for. Okay? Because it is, again, knowledge is power. Even spiritual knowledge, it's a lot of power. It's very powerful.
It's very interesting. Go ahead, Colonel. Go ahead, Krishna.
I want to chime in here because having grown up with a number of spiritual people, sometimes there's a tendency to be ignorant of the law of the land, the law of the jurisdiction. And many times people run afoul of the law, or they don't know what they can do. They don't know what powers they have because they are ignorant of the laws of the land. And sometimes they do things which put themselves in jeopardy and their situation in jeopardy, even as the alienated parent, because they don't understand the laws. So while you're praying, which you ought to be doing, also seek to be informed and seek to get knowledge of the laws and the situation. So that involves being informed about the condition, understanding narcissistic personality disorder, understanding what the law speaks to child abuse, and what the law speaks to separation, and what the law speaks to divorce, and the process that needs to be undertaken. So we don't just approach this spiritually, because anything that happens spiritually, it is null and void unless it is manifested into the physical realm. Otherwise, it doesn't impact on the situation. So while we are seeking spiritual intervention, we do our part in physically getting knowledgeable and getting informed about the situation that we are faced with.
I want to really, I think all of you touched on a part of this quote I'm going to give, because 2 Corinthians 10 from verses 4 through 6 says, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds," which we've been speaking about the whole evening, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought in parents or children into captivity to the obedience of Christ, and being ready to punish. A lot of people forget this last part. Being ready to punish all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled. So, Krishna, I think that's actually bang on, because when our obedience is fulfilled, when we have done what we are supposed to, then is when, as you said, there is a manifestation of spiritual realities ready to punish disobedience in others. So I think that's a very good encouragement to give to people. Jennifer asks, please speak to the signs one should look for from a narcissist before entering a marriage or a cohabiting relationship.
You want me to be truthful on this?
Yes,
Really?
please. Because we're here to help. We have to give them knowledge, as we said just now.
In many cases, there are no red flags being waved to say, I'm a narcissist. Because if a narcissist wants to be in a relationship with you, if they fall in love with you, okay, they're going to put their best foot forward. They'll put their best foot forward, and they're very practiced in it. However, if you find that you are with someone and you are mainly feeling as though you have to put them on a pedestal all the time, or else there's trouble. You feel as though you are put down in front of other people a lot so that they can build themselves up. That's trouble. If you feel as though they don't trust you, okay? Things like that. These are red flags of getting into relationships with certain people in any case. But because a narcissistic personality disorder is something that can manifest itself in so many different ways, I cannot sit here tonight and tell you, look for X, Y, or Z so that you can avoid getting into a relationship with a narcissistic personality. I would be lying.
I would want to approach it a little differently, because I've been asked that question a lot of times, and personally, as a person, one of the things I find that is most effective in refining the kind of selection that you come across, it has to do with building yourself. Because very often your own deficiencies are the things that will lead you into choosing the wrong person in the first place. So you're going to find that when you are deficient, or you feel deficiency within yourself, you're going to look for someone who compensates for that deficiency. But if you're finding your satisfaction in the workplace, which is in who God created you to be, and to be your best self in every situation, you're not going to attract the likes of narcissists, other persons who are probably not going to be good for you. So instead of looking outward, I think we need to look inward, and you're going to find that as you develop yourself inward, what you attract or what you exude is going to attract the right type of person to you. I think that very often we as human beings like to look for Miss Right and Mr. Right, while we ourselves are far from being Mr. Right or Mr. Right. I think we need to fix ourselves first, and then we'll attract the right types of people.
But apart from the attracting the right people, I think another really good area to look is if you get to know the person's family.
Yeah.
Okay. Get to know their background. And how they treat other people in their family, how they treat even their friends, their close friends. A lot of times people decide that I'm going to get into a relationship with, okay, let's just say me and Cornelius. I'm going to get in a relationship with Cornelius. I don't care nothing about Cornelius' family. I'm not in a business with them. I am with Cornelius. And that may be the worst possible thing I could do to myself and to a relationship that is based on a wholesome grounding with Cornelius. Why? I know nothing about him except for who he presents himself to me to be. And as we know now tonight with a narcissist, that presentation might not always be the true presentation of self.
Donna, that's an excellent point. Let me tell you, right? In fact, you just triggered me just now. If you meet a man, and I'm saying this to women, if you meet a man and that man absolutely hates his mother, red flag. Women, men, if you meet a woman and she absolutely hates her father, another red flag. Unless you can see that that father is definitely someone who is extremely abusive and extremely evil, or that mother is extremely, and most often that's not the case. I believe that you could look to see, and men that I know generally fare better with women that love their fathers and vice versa, you know? So I think that is a very good point, Donna. Very, very good point.
Okay, so chiming in on the issue of red flags, I think very, very significant red flag, very common within narcissistic type relationships or relationships with narcissistic type people is lack of validation. So when your emotions or your opinions aren't being validated, when you are giving in, when you're apologizing, and the other person is not doing the same, when you're willing to submit, not submit meaning going on your knees and do everything for them, but to some extent, yes. When you're willing to bear yourself and to apologize, but the other person is not doing the same, is not apologizing, they're not bearing themselves, when they're invalidating your feelings, when you are told that you don't have a right to feel that way, or why, you should not feel that way, should not feel that way. Who are you to have those beliefs when your beliefs are invalidated? Basically, invalidation is saying that your feelings or your beliefs are null and void. Sometimes they can even invalidate actions. They say that action did not happen. It's something you saw, it's something you witnessed, it's something you observed, and they're saying that action did not happen. That feeling you have, you don't have a right to feel that. So they're turning on its head realities that you can observe. Then these are persons that you don't want to negotiate, or you don't want to deal with. Because what they will eventually do, they will invalidate everything that you do, and they will always make themselves right and make you wrong at their convenience.
Called gaslighting.
Yes.
Yes, I was about to say that.
Gaslighting.
Well, I would like to add as well that we can make sure that we look out for an aversion. Go right back to the beginning of the conversation, an aversion to vulnerability, where there is a part of this person's life that is off limits. You can't get near that. Let me deflect. Let me change topic. Why are you asking about this all the time? Why are you? If this person has something that they are noticeably uncomfortable revealing to you or being vulnerable to you about, that is something as well. No, doesn't mean that it is a definite thing. It could be evidence of something else, but that is something that you can look out for. There's another question. Tanya, good evening. How do you get someone who doesn't believe anything is wrong, which we have already established is a hallmark of narcissism? They don't believe anything is wrong. How do you get them to seek help and be diagnosed?
I'm going to respond to that.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to respond to that quickly. You bring it to their awareness that you don't agree with what they're saying, but you have to distance yourself from them. Ultimately, after you bring stuff to their knowledge, you bring your invalidations, you bring your insight into their awareness, and they continually turn you down. They will get offended when you turn them away or when you don't play with them. When you don't negotiate with them, they get offended because they like the attention, they like the glory. So when you stop negotiating with them, this is even relating to children. Sometimes you have to walk away. Sometimes you have to distance yourself for others, or for they themselves to realize that what they're suggesting isn't working. So after bringing it to their attention, then you want to limit your interaction and limit your negotiation with them.
I'm also going to say this too. In many cases, people who have NPD have other complications, especially later in life. Anything from depression to substance abuse, things like that. And it may be, I'm not going to say easier for want of a better word, but it may be more successful to have them go and address another issue than the narcissistic situation. because they do not see them. It's easier for somebody to admit that they drink a bit too much alcohol, or they're abusing a drug, or they have a depression, than for them to go because they're narcissistic. Because in their eyes, there's nothing wrong with them in that at that level.
And bear in mind that when
But
we go
you can show them. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say that when you go back to you see, that's why it's important what we did earlier, discuss narcissism and its roots. There is a detachment. The psychologists that would have done research on it recognize that that narcissism and its roots. There is a detachment from the trauma that they had, which caused them to detach from the pain and the anger and the rage that they have. So they cannot, and this is important to understand, a narcissist or person with NPD does not connect with their own pain to recognize and to own it. Because one of the things that you will learn in therapy is that one has to, in order to connect to a problem, you have to connect with the source of the trauma. So the fact that they cannot connect, is why they are usually not able to get help. Most of the research shows that most times the narcissist, because of the actual condition itself, will never get help. So it is on the person that is what you call the regular, the normal, or the one that is well. So because the narcissist is considered ill in a sense. The person that is well, they have to navigate for themselves and for their child or children. It's as simple as that. I mean, there's no skirting around it. And I mean, we'd be lying to tell a person that narcissist is gonna, if you're gonna tell them about their problem, they're gonna say, "Oh, really? Okay, let me go and start getting some therapy." It's not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen. I mean, I've read a lot of the research over the last couple of years, and it suggests that by the actual nature of this disorder, they will never get help. So in other words, you can't change them, so you need to change you, to put it bluntly. You need to change you and the way you approach it, the way you deal with it, the way you navigate it. Do it for you and your child. You need to get that piece on it. In other words, you have to accept it. And accept it doesn't mean agree. It just means accept what it is that you can now start to navigate.
I think I can't emphasize enough the importance of walking away or distancing oneself. Persons who are manipulative or manipulating situations, as they continue to shift the goalposts, whether this is within a relationship or in a workplace or in a team of whatever form, as long as they're continually changing the goalposts, they're going to drive you crazy.
Yes.
Before anything changes. If you continue to try to fight them and try to continue to, I've seen it within my office a number of times, and I've seen it within workplaces. If you continually try to negotiate with them and fight them and follow them, they're going to keep shifting the goalposts. While it's hard to end the relationship, or even sometimes hard to feel the separation from one's child, to feel the separation from one's relationship, blood, sweat, and tears into the relationship, into the family, into building the house, into gathering the assets and the resources. When you're dealing with someone who manipulates, they will continually be winning. They will continually win at their convenience. And over, I see, whether it's within teams or relationships, it is best not to negotiate. It's best not to follow after them, but to distance yourself. As long as you've made your point, as long as you've let them know your concerns, don't follow them. Eventually, they will want the affirmation. They will want the approbation, and they will come after you when they're not getting the glory that they desire.
Definitely. And I've seen that in play as well. And when they come after you, they're not going to come after you the way they left. They're going to come after you in a completely different way, because why? They have to win. In this case, you are the target. So when they come back, they have not changed. They're not sorry.
Even though they're humble, they appear to be humble.
Yes, they're humble. Get you back in that net. Exactly.
And Donna, you are the target and the children are the objects.
Yes.
Yeah, you're the target and the children are the objects. And the objects that they want, the trophies they want to win.
Yeah.
And they don't mind the fact that the children are getting damaged, because, as I said, because of the disconnect they have and the lack of empathy, the fact that these children are being destroyed, it does not occur in their world. It's about winning. And it's not about, let me think about how the children are feeling. Let me think about how he felt as a child and what he didn't like. No, they're disconnected from all those feelings. So if you think that the narcissist is going to be negotiating life by your rules and thinking empathetic like you're thinking, you have got it so wrong. And I like how Tristan put it, the fact that when the goalpost starts to change on you, right, is going to drive you crazy. And trust me, this may sound hard to hear, but a regular, normal person is not going to win against a narcissist when it comes to these psychological and emotional battles. They are cultured by the virtue of the actual condition itself. They're cultured to handle that type of terrain that you cannot handle. It'll drive you crazy.
Yeah,
And the scary part of it, and the scary part of it is this: if your children are going through life with a narcissistic parent, and they then become detached because of what they're living, we're raising a bunch of narcissistic adults who are going to just perpetuate that very, very, very disruptive relationship with anybody they come across. That's very scary. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I've seen it, how many is very difficult as a therapist, it's very, very difficult working with a victim or you're talking the alienated parent or the alienated person in the relationship, because they always feel like they have to fight for this relationship. I need to fight for this. This is something I've worked hard for. And they're not realizing that this was always, perhaps it was always, or for a great deal in the relationship, the goal or the modus operandi of the manipulator to manipulate. And so you will never win. You will never win, and keep continuing to follow them. I mean, I tell my clients and I tell people that I know about that I come across with manipulative persons, tell them this all the time. You cannot win, do not fight. And I tell them this repeatedly in sessions, and I tell them this over many sessions. First thing you want to do is understand the faulty beliefs. Second thing you want to do is understand that they're shifting the goalpost. And as long as this is their objective to shift the goalpost, you will never be the winner, because they're trying to do it their way for their convenience. Then they're not thinking about your interests. They're not thinking about the child's interests. They're simply trying to look good and to win. And as long as that's happening, this is no longer a negotiation situation. This is something that you have to run for the hills, as someone said. You have to stop negotiating and get away.
Can I
add to that too, right? We also, a lot of women, unfortunately, have the tendency to feel they can fix everything. You cannot fix a narcissist. You can't fix it. All right. So back to you now. Go ahead.
I just want to ask you all. We're looking at practical steps. It appears that Krishnan's earlier statement is really the only hope you have. Walk away, because only it takes two people to fight. If you've only got one person in the ring, you don't have a fight.
You can walk away from the confrontation and the war, but you can never walk away from your children. You can never walk away from your children. So I know Krishnan is talking about walking away from the fight, because I'm sure he wouldn't suggest to walk away from the children. But I would say that at the end of the day, like you play cricket with cricket rules, you play football with football rules, you need to understand the rules of working with narcissistic personality disorders. You just need to learn the rules and navigate to suit. It is a reality, it is a fact, and the thing about it is to just accept. You don't have to agree, but you just have to accept. Once you accept, you're going to find yourself experiencing a level of peace like you've never known. Just accept it and just don't get any fights. Don't feel as though you have to win any wars, or win any battles, because essentially, by losing the battles, you will win the war. You cannot, and I think we're all saying the same thing. You cannot fight on the terms of a narcissist.
But
will.
If I,
well, you spoke to not walking away from children. Having dealt with some of these situations and knowing of fathers and mothers who are in these types of situations, both in office and in the community, it hurts to say this, but you want to leave the door open to your children, and you want to let them know that you care, and you want to let them know that you're always there for them. And at every opportunity, you want to make yourself available to them. However, there is a level of manipulation, and some people say brainwashing, that occurs by the alienator and the manipulator, that sometimes they're putting the children against you. And I know personal situations. I know situations of friends. I know situations of clients where they were continually trying to get access to the children. You're continually trying to reach out to the children, and the alienator continued to use the children as pawns. And when that is happening, unfortunately, sometimes the children are so set against the parent, against the alienated, that there's nothing the alienated can do. And therefore, while you're leaving the door open to them, and every given opportunity you want to let them know that you care and you're there for them, sometimes you have to walk away, because they will use the children to draw you back into their game, right? And you have to be very sensitive to that, to those games where they're using the children as opportunities. Oh, come and spend time. Come and spend time. And when you get to bring the children back home, then they're cussing you and they're arguing and they're using those as opportunities to put you down and to insult you and to criticize what you've done. And when those things are happening, you have to walk away. You have to realize over the pattern of it happening that this person is using these children against me. I cannot win this. As much as I love my children, and I know it hurts to say this, it really hurts. In the same way, being in a relationship, trying to get out of the relationship with this manipulator, trying to reconcile with children whose minds have been turned against you is very, very difficult. And when you realize that's happening, you can't win. You leave the door open. You provide yourself access, or you make yourself accessible, but you realize after a while you can't win and you have to walk away as well.
I want to throw this out there. What about the team? Because a lot of this tends to boil down to almost a one-on-one situation. What about one of the things that I have noticed in some of the persons that I have seen experience breakups and with children and such like, is getting the in-laws to assist, getting uncles and aunts to assist, getting people who can recognize that something is wrong, or recognize, even if they don't recognize something is wrong, they recognize that what is being painted, the picture being painted of you, is not quite lining up with what they know of you, and therefore they're willing to be an ally.
In regular situations where there's a breakup between two people, those extended family members could work. In many cases where there is a narcissistic individual, they will turn children against the extended family as well.
Whoever comes against them.
Yeah.
And
in many cases, sometimes the only saving grace is to go through the legal system, where you can literally argue for at least the visitation, and know that if you're supposed to see the child or have access to the child X number of days in a week, that by legal thing where you can go and petition the court and say, well, I didn't get my chance or my time, then that will be another whole battle. But sometimes that's what it comes down to, because not even family members extended are outside of the net of the alienator.
And sometimes too, when family members try to get involved and helping them to do the right thing, they reject them as well. They will literally cut them off. I know of cases where family members and close friends were actually cut off by persons who are suffering from NPD. And they do it very easily because, as I said, as we said,
they must win.
They must be, and not only
Yeah.
that, they are detached from the normal emotions that people feel, the natural empathy. So they be going along with you for the last 20 years, and you come up and tell them that, you know, what you're doing is wrong, and they will accuse you of siding with their ex-wife or ex-husband, and they will cut you off. These people, as I said, they're suffering from sickness, and I know we have a lot of other discussions coming up that will dive into different angles of it, but it is someone literally with a sickness, a mental health disorder, a personality disorder, and we cannot deal with them and judge them on the same platform as we judge other persons who are what we would call generally normal.
Okay.
All right.
So I want to add to this. No, we're talking of team, and I wanted to bring it up earlier. So thanks for bringing it, for addressing it, Graham. The alienated, they really need a team, because when you're dealing with someone who is manipulative or manipulating, or alienating, it's important for you to have, as the alienated, to have your own support system. And we know that the family tends to be the primary, the family is the primary organization, the primary support system. So you need your own friends, your own unbiased and reasonable and rational, but encouraging support system. Those who will be able to feed you with encouragement, who will be able to breathe life into you, who will also be able to see the situation as much as possible from an unbiased position. Because the alienator is trying to, put everybody in a corner, put you in a corner, obviously. But having friends around you who are able to see one side and see the other, and being able to reason things through is very, very important. Especially when you're being manipulated, it can drive you crazy when you're going through this on your own and you only have your perspective. So having someone else on your team who's able to shine light on different options and different alternatives is very, very life-bringing and very supportive. And I think you ought not to go through a situation of parental alienation or any type of manipulation on your own. It is always best to find a team, whether that team is personal friends, family, or even a therapist, to help you to think the situation through.
And I'm going to add to that too. Sometimes when you have that team, they can recognize in you when you are showing signs of mental distress as well, like depression. Sometimes when you start to doubt everything around you, you might even doubt your own
Sanity.
reason for being here, sanity. And you need to have somebody like a lifeline to say, no, you are here. We've got you. Right? And you need that person as well. Or persons. You need that team.
But what I also find is that as you, the alienated, as you build your support team and you build your own personal knowledge, it gives you a sense of calm. Most persons that I know of who go through these things, as they increase their knowledge base, they become more peaceful and they learn better how to navigate. So they get into less arguments and less fights with the partner they once had that is now showing this NPD. And basically, they become a lot happier, a lot more peaceful. It's about having your own personal peace. Because the thing about when your peace is disrupted, it can affect your physical health as well, not only your mental health. There are persons who will develop all forms of non-communicable diseases as a result, as a research out there is also showing it. So it is to your benefit and to the benefit of your health. I would say your life depends on it. To find that space and find that place where you can be peaceful. And if a support group, if building your knowledge will do it, then go for it. And pray, of course.
Yeah. And can I also add? Yes. Can I also add? Not everyone has the ability or the inclination to go out and do research and study and read. Okay. Some people, when they are hurting, would go and self-medicate. Having a team is not people who are going to say, come and have a drink, come and have a smoke, come and have. Okay, no, you need somebody around you who, as Kristen said, is going to remind you about your sanity, right? Give you a listening ear. Maybe somebody who has the ability to do the reading and the research on your behalf and let you know what they have found. And then you can have your aha moments that way. Okay. So in everything, what we're looking at is for those people who can and those people who can get help, please talk with somebody else. You may have been with somebody who has been distrustful and envious of you, all of that, and you might not have had the opportunity to tell somebody in those words what they are doing to you. You might not even have very good vocabulary to express how you truly feel, but your team, those people around you, will understand, right? But you need to have a team, somebody that you trust, somebody that knows you from the time you were small, somebody that has met you when you're big, but can understand what you're going through. Those are members of
Okay.
your team.
All right. Well, thank you so very much for your time this evening, Cornelius Bartlett, Donatel Cox, Krishnan Hurdle. Thank you so very much. And I speak on my behalf and on the behalf of our watchers on Facebook and on YouTube. And thank you so very much. I think that you've really started the ball rolling as we look this month at this familial issue of narcissism and parental alienation. This is definitely a solid foundation for our start that we can go forward on. I want to say good evening to everybody and thank you for joining us in this Family Fest month of July. Don't forget, we are going to be here every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. and every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. with much more on this very, very necessary discussion about narcissism and parental alienation. You can stay connected with our valuable discussions and insights by subscribing to the Family Fest Barbados YouTube channel. Your subscription will help us continue to promote health, hope, healing, and peace within families and communities. Simply click the link below to join our growing community at Family Fest Barbados. We appreciate your participation in this evening's discussion. Please help us spread awareness by sharing this broadcast with your friends, family, and colleagues. Subscribe to our social media channels and stay tuned for upcoming event this Thursday, where we delve into the emotional turmoil experienced by alienated parents. Don't miss Victims of Parental Alienation, the pain of the alienated parent, this Thursday evening, 7:30 sharp on social media, Facebook and YouTube. Please remember to pray for us and don't forget, you can join Family Fest, join the team and support what we do, volunteer and assist, and you can also become an investor, one-time or regular investor. And don't forget, we're not talking about donations, we're talking about investment because we're looking for a return on that investment as we seek to repair the family. Thank you for joining us this evening. Please be with us on Thursday for the Family Fest team. For the panelists this evening, I'm Graham Vaughan saying good night and thank you.